Hail, hail, the Celts are here, and what the hell do we care now? It's that time of the week again where we look at all the transfer activity from Celtic, the incomings, the outgoings, the transfer rumour mill, the faux pas, and maybe some of the missed opportunities. But this week we've got a nice kind of little special angle on this. As you guys all know, Brendan Rodgers is a subscriber here on Celts are here. He's a huge fan of the content, and he has dipped into our transfer wish list to approach Jakob Breum of Go Ahead Eagles to bring him to the hoops. But on top of that, we've had a few different outgoings. We've maybe had some AI tomfoolery at play as well, and with all that we've had the bit added context of the pre-season developments where we've seen some of the players excel or not really excel by comparison, that maybe shed some light on the development of the squad and really how we look to approach this season throughout the remaining period of the transfer window as we prepare for the Champions League qualifiers and the league restarting. At any point in the video, if you do laugh, you learn, you like something or whatever, please do like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. We are very, very close to breaking through 13,000 subscribers, and it would be very much appreciated and massive for the channel if we could break through that 13,000 subscriber mark before we kick off against St Mirren as we hurtle towards our goal on the channel of getting to 18,888 subscribers. As always guys, jump into the comment section on this one and let me know your thoughts and feelings, your big takeaways from everything you've seen in pre-season, the transfer activity and everything that we chat about in the video. But let's just get stuck straight into this one, because before we talk about any prospective incomings, and there's a few plates spinning now for Celtic, there is a little bit of housekeeping, a little bit of readjustments to be done on the tactics board, on the depth chart that we've got here. Okay, now we'll deal with the easy stuff. Palma is on his way out to Lech Poznan. We wish him all the best. Good luck to you, Bao. And Marco Tilio has found his way to Rapid Vienna in the Austrian Bundesliga. Again, thanks for coming, pal, and good luck with your move. Which just leaves really Quan is the last kind of fringe player here in the depth chart that we need to go out and address. We can maybe chat about, like Quinny and Osmond and some other bits and bobs later in the video, but in terms of like the overall squad paradigm, the laundry list of players where we're looking to get out, Naroki, Lager BLK, Palma, Tilio, all these guys are basically all but gone now, which is great for the club to get them off the books, of course. But like I said in the transfer window where we signed all these guys, and I was mentioning this on Axom this week and maybe even on Huddle Breakdown last week, where clubs of our kind of position in the football kind of food chain, as it were, we do need to have stock to sell. We can't always rely upon having a superstar player that we can A, sell for big money, or B, afford to lose out the squad to fund whatever you would need to sell players to fund. Really, it's kind of a bit of a question mark at this point, considering how rich the club currently is at the moment. And in order to do that, you either need to have a really strong academy that's producing player after player that you can just sell for 2 million here, 4 million there, 1 million, half a million, loan fees, whatever, sell-on clauses, all that kind of stuff. And in the absence of that, like we are currently in the position of, you need to go and acquire assets. You need to go and acquire stock to then kind of, get it back out into the market to kind of turn for a profit. And, I don't think any of these moves are going to be particularly profitable. Maybe Tilio's the exception because of how cheap he was in the first place. But maybe with sell-on clauses and other bits and bobs, add-ons, it'll look like much better business as time rolls on. But anyway, the main development that we've seen to the remaining squad, the actual main body of the first team that we expect to come into the new season, is Ben Negrin, who I was said when we signed him, especially right off the back of Kuhn leaving, that he was probably going to play in this position as a bit of a placeholder until we actually replace Nicholas Kuhn, or maybe even when we replace Kyogo, depending on how you want to reckon it in your mind. But Negrin has actually been featuring more and more in this central midfield position, which I think is a great development for the squad in one hand. Because if that is the case, that Negrin is to be part of this box-to-box midfield 8 position that we used to see O'Reilly and Engels did okay in last year or whatever, but to be that foil between McGregor and Hatate and also have the guile and the flair to pop up in wide areas or whatever, but then having McKeown as an understudy to play in these kind of attacking positions off the bench, Bernardo to kind of cover for McGregor, and maybe even the same kind of job we've seen with Bernardo already. And then Engels can really come off the bench for anyone, in this point, or be rotated. He doesn't always need to come off the bench. But we all want a defensive midfielder with a hard nose, an eye for danger, all that kind of stuff. But quite sincerely, if Negrin is going to be a first team regular in this type of shape, we're not going to buy another midfielder. I just don't see it happening. I think this will be the 6 that we run the season with. There might be space for a 7th to come in who maybe is like, I think Ure is going to go out on loan to Partick Thistle or Queen's Park or Ayr United or something like that, so he probably won't be in that position himself personally. But I think there is room for maybe another youth-based kind of midfielder to maybe come in here. Maybe even Odenholm, when his loan finishes in MLS in December, we might see him kind of fill into that position, and maybe he'll have another chapter to write in his Celtic career to this point. But the development, although positive for midfield, it feels like Negren is kind of the missing link that we didn't have last year. The last video we did was about the winger crisis, and if we take Negren out of the equation as a don't want to say a viable winger, because he is viable, but a contributing winger into the squad, if we take him out of the frame as that, we only have Forrest on the right, we have Dyson on the left, and depending on the reports that you've seen, we did see Yang pictured in a Norwich shirt. I think that was AI generated. I think that was a bit of a hoax. So we do have Yang, who can play both sides, we know that already, and there is a bit of chat going around already that Yamada might be fancied to try and play in these kind of wider positions, maybe in a similar way to what we've seen with Negren and Jude Bonner earlier in pre-season, where although they were a right winger, they were tucking in to make like a midfield diamond with the other three players in midfield to make a bit of a box kind of shape or whatever. So maybe Yamada has a little bit of that about him, but I would doubt it at this point. I would doubt that is the plan for him, certainly. So we are extremely light on the wings. Ben Summers has kind of featured on the wing in pre-season, but that's kind of been diminishing as time has went on. And like I say, I originally kind of imagined this guy as being a midfielder, like a centre mid for us. And of course we have Jota, who will become available, fit and ready to go for really the second half of the season, is probably the best prediction or projection to when we see Jota back in action. Now, of course, we have been relentlessly linked to Michel-Ange Balikwisha from Antwerp, and it feels like, based on all the reports, this move can go, will go, and we can sign this guy as soon as the club bridges the gap between where they are estimation wise, whether it be wages or transfer fees from the player and Antwerp. But by all accounts, we're very much interested in this guy. We have had open dialogue, and we kind of know where the chips fall. If we want to make this deal happen, the club knows exactly what they're going to do to push it on. But the fact that we've kept this guy on ice and we've kind of been like tentatively going after it makes me think that this is just more of an insurance policy, that if we don't get some other targets later in the window, that this could be one that we pounce for. And the way things stand at the moment, Balikwisha can take with his left, can take with his right, has experience playing really anywhere in the front four positions, mainly as a left winger, but we could certainly utilise him as a right winger with the way he plays. And I think if we brought him in, it would feel like we've got a better quality of balance across the wings. Another player we've been linked to was Louis Muntiau of Cluj. Now, this is a move that really, or this is a link that really came out of left field for me. The Romanian league and the Bulgarian league and the Serbians and, all those type of Eastern European divisions, yeah, they've got some historic clubs in them. They've got some big stadiums. They used to be a bit more influential in European and world football maybe like 30 years ago. But for the most part, these leagues don't really produce very many good players nowadays, whether they be native players or even ones that they get involved in the transfer market. But this link that we had to him was quickly quashed because it looks like Rennes are stumping up 12 million euros for this kid, and considering Kivitz Gardens and all the other stuff that we've seen from Celtic over recent windows, we will not be spending 12 million euros on a guy from Romania. But the latest player that's been linked to Celtic, like I mentioned in the intro, comes straight from the notebook here on Celtsar here. One of the top players that we recommended coming into the summer window, one of the standout emerging talents that we've seen in the Eredivisie with Go Ahead Eagles, who won the Dutch Cup this year. Now, he does have a teammate called Antman, who I thought was just maybe stylistically a little bit more appropriate for where we are at right now, but we have actually went for the best player at Go Ahead Eagles this season, which was Jakob Breum. Now, we featured Jakob Breum on the Dutch video we did earlier in this series earlier this year. If you did miss it, I'll link the playlist at the end of this video and you can go and check it out. The Jakob Breum section is 16 minutes into the video itself, but this is a guy that is very, very versatile at the very early stages of his career. He's only 21 years of age, and as you can see in the Dutch Eredivisie, which is a very high ranking league, we've also got the top 5 leagues, the big 5 across Europe, and then Portugal and Holland are basically neck and neck for that 6th position. And Jakob Breum, Go Ahead Eagles, qualified for Europe this year. He did very, very well. But this guy is, stylistically and profile-wise, he's a Celtic player. He's going to look great in the hoops. If you go and watch the highlight reels you can find on YouTube, he's maybe not quite got that same stardust level that Negren has, but make no mistake about it, this guy is going to fit into the squad like no problem at all. Very good on the press, very good team player, very versatile, and I think that's the main catalyst to us making this approach or trying to make this move happen. And a player that really, no matter what his squad status is at Celtic, is going to see this as a massive move in his career, a massive step up, and the next phase for him necessarily. And this is the sort of player we want to be buying. This is the sort of player we want to be shopping in the market for, similar to Negren, Yamada to some extent, I suppose, as well. And let's see what other kind of business we get done. But Antman feels much more like the sort of player we would need from Go Ahead in terms of he's much more of a right winger that can play centre forward. Whereas Jakob Breum is played on the wing, particularly left wing. If he's had to be played out wide for Go Ahead Eagles in the Dutch league before, he can play out wide, but he's definitely much more of an attacking midfielder, a number 10. And actually can play through the middle, can actually play up front. And this actually really raises a lot of questions. If we are going to play him as a right winger, in that kind of Negren, Jude Bonner kind of position that we've seen earlier on in pre-season, where off the ball, we maybe see them kind of formatting up like this, almost like a 4-3-2, or 4-1-3-2, or a 4-4-2 narrow, or however you want to call this shape. I could imagine that happening quite easily. It could maybe even be he would come in to do a bit of this Negren role, and Negren's maybe a bit more effective, a bit more comfortable out in this role. And again, we've got some versatility to kind of play around with. But one thing that really struck me, or the first thing that came to my mind, really was when I seen this link to Jakob Breum, is it would probably be the best player to do this false nine. Do I say hold-up striker? Because we don't... I know Kenny's got good hold-up play, and we've been discussing this quite a lot. Yamada might have elements of that in his game as well. But it's really someone that can play football. Drop deep, link up the play, and then get back into the box to go on and finish. And that was my first thought with this, is maybe that is going to be the spot for him. If that is the spot for him, we're still no further forward with the wingers. Does that maybe move Adam Ida out the club somehow? Because Yamada, Kenny and Breum as the centre forward choices are all kind of similar stylistically, and then you're just kind of picking who's on form and fresh legs and that kind of thing, versus having two different actual profiles of the bigger kind of target man type and then the kind of more football based kind of deep lying forward false nine kind of thing or whatever. But Celtic have made an opening bid for this kid of £1.5 million, and Go Ahead have came back and said we want £5 million. Now Celtic should just be biting their hand off at this point. We shouldn't be messing about, we shouldn't be playing games, because we are in a bit of a winger crisis at the moment. And although this guy isn't really a winger, it depends on what we're going to do with the rest of the squad, potentially, like I mentioned, or any sort of development in shape. Because, again, like we've seen in pre-season, we've not really seen Alistair Johnson yet, of course, but with the width that we're getting from Tierney, it's easy to imagine that we do get our width from the fullbacks. We tell Dyson to get closer to the forward, whoever that is, and then we kind of, do this kind of triple, this 1-3 midfield kind of shape or whatever, with McGregor and Trusty and Carter Vickers kind of protecting the back, as it were. That could be fun, that could be interesting, that would be really good for domestic football, certainly. For Champions League, I'm not too sure how that really helps us. Breum is quite good at pressing and all that kind of stuff. Like I mentioned, he's not been tested to the same level that we have over recent years, Champions League and all the rest of it, so I can't attest to it to that same level. But if he has a bit of a press machine, or it makes a step up as that bit of a press machine, then yeah, away from home in the Champions League or whatever, he could do a similar job to Dyson, where it's just about being really good in the press, being really good defensively. But like we always say about Dyson, he's not really a winger, he's more of an inside forward. This is the sort of move Dyson wants to make more often than not, and if Breum's going to be on this side of the pitch, I'm sure he'd be really happy to do that as well. Like I say, quite equally, it could be Negren with Breum through the middle here. And the great thing that this guy offers into the, from looking at his season last year, watching him and seeing how he would add into the team, he's very clearly not just got assists and playmaking in his bag, but he has a goal scorer. This is a guy that hits the back of the net. And, he can play through the middle. He can play up front, I should say, rather than through the middle, obviously, because we've been chatting about through the middle. But, this is a guy that can add more goals in from midfield that we have been missing. Negren's kind of seen as being the O'Reilly replacement now, and I can get behind that totally. But even if Negren was to kind of go back to being the Kuhn replacement, and then Breum was to come in here, I could see it working out just as effectively. And if we do go and get Jakob Breum over the line, I'm not even too sure where to place him out. Let's just leave him out in the wing and assume that is the plan for him. It still probably leaves us with like another winger to go and find, because although Jota's going to come back, I don't think we want to need Breum as a winger. I would like to see there being space for this guy to come into the middle of the pitch here, which would probably mean someone like Osmond maybe plays B-team football or gets loaned out or something, I don't know. Yamada's just in the building, it's hard to imagine he would be sent back out on loan right away. And Johnny Kenny, let's see how it shakes out with him, his contract and all the rest of it. I'd love Johnny Kenny to get a new contract, and I know he's been very impressive in pre-season, but to strike while the iron's hot with Johnny Kenny, I don't want to take wind out of his sails. I don't want to put him on the bench gathering dust and get 10 minutes here, 5 minutes there. Let's get this kid a new contract and let's send him to Belgium, Holland, Portugal, somewhere like that. The team doesn't matter as long as we're going to play him and get some development out of him. Maybe we then have Yamada and Ida as being the outright 1 and 2 striker choice. And then you've got someone like Breum who can... could even come off the bench for Dyson playing left wing perhaps. This is a guy that could really fill into a number of different positions, and is that kind of Swiss Army knife potential that Celtic love, 2 players for the price of 1 when they can play multiple positions. So it would maybe free him up to show up in some more spaces. But even as I'm saying that, that could just be the number 1 plan, where Breum is like the first forward off the bench. He could come on for Forrest or whoever else we signed to play right wing, Balikwisha or whatever. It could come on for Dyson, it could come on for Ida or Yamada or whatever. Maybe makes it a bit harder for Yang to get minutes in that scenario, but this is a player that we should be pursuing, we should be going for. You want as many good players into the building as you can possibly get, and the more options, the more versatile that Brendan can make the team, makes us so much harder to scout, makes us a more dangerous opponent domestically and on the continent. And really with the skill set that he adds alongside Negren, I think we're going to see some version of Rio Hatate if we've got this level of footballer, actual players, tight spaces, team focused, strong athletes, building the play, making the opportunities happen for us, interplaying with one another. Hatate in that press support position alongside the forward, and then we've got the likes of Negren and Breum kind of zipping in and around this area here. It could just be absolute peak havoc, peak chaos for someone like Dyson to come in for tap-ins, someone like Ida to get his Celtic career really established and up and running at this point, or Yamada, Kenny, Osmond, whoever it might be. And then when you do get Jota back in later, it just really takes the team to a whole new level later on in the season. The only kind of caveat I would say with this, I think Hatate is going to be here next season. I don't think there's any qualms about that. But Breum could be could be a forward planning thing, for after the World Cup. If Hatate was to go away next summer, you would just put Breum into this position, and really looking at the rest of the midfield, if we still had McCowan, Bernardo, Engels and whatever, again, you'd probably look at that and think there's not too much work to be done in midfield, although McGregor at that point would be another year older, and maybe that's a different kettle of fish altogether. But yeah, just the kind of small caveat on this is maybe Breum isn't just for this season, but he's maybe a further down the road guy as well. I think Breum could be a pretty solid actual Kyogo replacement as well, if we was to play through the middle for us. But again, I can't shake that feeling, which is why I brought it up again, but I just think this is so crowded in here that I just don't know how all these guys get minutes, how we keep the squad balanced effectively and everyone being at their competitive best when called upon. So there's definitely still going to be some outgoings from Celtic, make no mistake about it. I don't really imagine we're going to spend any more money in defence. We were linked to Flavio last week, the left back. I could still see us making a move like that, but Inamura is definitely given the Celtics, the hierarchy, food for thought. Just seeing this, Montgomery has just went on loan to Livingston, so he'll be out there this year. I should probably put Welsh in here. And yeah, there's probably, is Inamura in here as a quasi centre back and a left. So again, if we get Breum and I would love us to get Breum and Balikwisha. If we got Breum and Balikwisha, I think the front line is cooking. And then we are waiting for that defensive midfielder to come and maybe the final defensive piece of reinforcement. And really, I think the squad is good to go. It's maybe not quite as supercharged as we would like it, but it really depends on the remaining business that we do throughout the window. I think we've been really clever with some of the outgoings and the incomings we've managed to do so far, especially within the budget range that we've been finding these players in. And it does lead you to think, where is the big money player going to come into the squad? Trusty's been doing so well in pre-season. Feels like the manager's putting a lot of trust and effort into him, and like I've seen on Axom on Monday, Tierney being on the left hand side here, it just feels like it's going to change Trusty's life. It's going to make him look like a much better Celtic centre back a lot quicker. So it's hard to see where we spend big money now if we do go and get a Breum and or a Balikwisha without loaning out Osmond, Kenny and Yamada. Loan all of them out, play Breum as the second forward, and then we go and spend big money on some more wingers or whatever. But yeah, I'd love to see the Jakob Breum move signed, sealed and delivered. Really by the end of the week would be lovely, since Go Ahead Eagles have told us the transfer value. The transfer value is very much within our grasp. It shouldn't be an issue. For a guy that's 21, that's just won a cup in a prominent league in Europe with a very, very unfancied team that, recruited well, built a nice squad last year, whatever. But all the same, winning mentality, great kind of early signs in his career, kind of, like the 26 appearances, 10 goals, 5 assists in the league. In the cup, 3 appearances, 1 goal. Just like Celtic love. A very well decorated youth international player. You know how we love them. Let me know your thoughts and feelings on all of this down below. Should we make Breum a must buy? Should we go out, push the boat out, go and get him in? Is there any other outgoings that we've not really touched on in the video today that you believe could happen? And really, with the war chest that we're still sitting on, who do we spend that money on? What position, what area of the pitch gets that extra reinforcement after the Champions League qualifier or before it, or however it does shake out? Let me know your feelings down below. On screen now is some other stuff that we've made that YouTube thinks you might enjoy. I'll also put the Dutch League scouting video that I mentioned earlier in the video. I'll put that on screen here for you just now in case you want to watch that directly, as well as something else that we've made. I say YouTube thinks you might enjoy that one too. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more content like this. We're pushing for 13,000 subs before the first game of the season. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. Hail, hail, and won the hoops.